As I mentioned in a previous episode, I went through this whole project and I got up to about 11 and I decided, oh, I want to change these frames. Just to go over this composition real quick, as you see the background is this background in 5 is actually animated just like the background in part 2, where it's just an overlap. We can show you that. It's just this overlapping technique, and then that's later put into a loop. The lovers from part 1 in this series have their LUT that's created from the gradient map, which came from Photoshop, and also they're soloed here so that they can be just kind of tweaked a little bit with the puppet tool, so they look like they are standing still, but they're moving a little bit. So that's the gist of the whole composition. The issue I have right now is that I'm switching out all these frames.
And there's a couple of different ways to do that. So let's have a look over in Cinema 4D. Over here, I've got this set up where I can make the window bigger or smaller.
I've got this inner spline and this outer spline. That's this spline here and this spline here, and this one's rounded. And I've got those splines put in a connect object with an extrude. So when I extrude them, I get this. And come down to the extrude, and I give it a little bevel on the edges here, and then I position the camera so that I get a square shot of the frame. And this plane right here represents my artwork. So I just have to punch in the relative numbers of my artwork and then position the window to match. And I do that by using the inner spline. I can make it taller and shorter based on the size of the artwork. Some of the artworks are really square, whereas some of the artworks are more rectangular. I was able to get the texture on there and have it wrap around the edges using cubic projection mode. So the texture wraps around the corners pretty well. Let's go over how I made the texture. Okay, so now we've got the file open with the pattern that I make my texture out of. And as you can see, it's just a tiled wall. If we come in close, you can see that it's one tile standing on top of another tile. And if we break this down over here, I've got the connect object and a cloner and a null. I've got two splines extruded, two hexagon splines extruded. We turn off the cloner. You can see that it looks like this. And then in the cloner, you can see that it's the honeycomb pattern. And then I just arranged it so that it fit. If it were a little wider, you'd see it coming apart like that. But I pulled it together like that. It gives it a kind of a spacey kind of vibe. So to make the normals map that I use to generate the pattern on my frames, what you want to do once you've got your pattern made, you would need to reduce this down to a single object. And you can do that by going to current state object. And now it's a single object. And pull this away and actually turn this other one off so it doesn't get in your way. Get yourself a plane. Make sure it's lined up properly to your wall. Just just let it sit right above the pattern. Then we need to get a materials tag, a bake material tag. And then in the tag options, we need to give it a name. This will be metal pattern. And we'll just say that we want a JPEG. The sRGB is good. Size is kind of small. We'll go for 1024. Guess this is okay. Options. It's so rare that I do this. Normals. Okay, for the source, you want to put that connect object in there. And I believe we're ready to go. Now overwrite the old file. And that's it. That's how you generate that normals map. And once you have that generated, what you'll want to do is come over and create a material. Come over to the normals and load that pattern that you just made, and then you'll see it generated on your surface. Okay, now we're back in After Effects. I've dragged my frame into my folder. We have a different color. This is a different project than the one we were just working on, but I did 12 of these, so we're going to use this one for now. I've dragged the frame onto the comp, and I just need to now adjust the color because obviously I'm not gonna want this color. I put a hue and saturation in there and a levels. This levels helps build out the contrast a little bit. If I reset this, you can see it's not quite as contrasty, but if I pull these together, it gets a little darker. Oops, and it gets a little contrastier, which I kind of like. It brings out kind of the metallic vibe. Obviously, we don't want this one to be green, so just walk around and see what we like. Kind of feel like it should be red, but at the same time, I really like this golden color. I think the golden color is going to be the way to go. Let's see, just tip it up a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks nice and hot, and I think I'm going to go with that. So that's how I make the frames. In the next episode, we're going to talk about making a web page for the project, and I hope you check that out. We'll see you then.